first question is, when did you start in the army?
When did I join in the army?
Yeah.
May 1947, and I was 17 years old.
Thank you. What was your motive for joining the army?
What was my reason for joining the army?
Yes.
Because I thought I had to do it. Eventually I would have got called up, but by volunteering and joining early, I could get in the regiment of my choice.
How did you feel during the war?
How did I what?
How did you feel during the war?
That's an unusual question to ask anybody. How did I feel? It's rather awkward to ask that one.
So when you were a young boy, before you joined up, what was it like living in London during the war?
Oh, we was getting bombed, etc. And that's what decided me I've got to do my bit. And before that, I was an army cadet as a young man. And before that, I was in the Home Guard. And so I thought I'd better join the army, so I volunteered.
Was it scary living in London?
I think it was, really. Yes. And if anybody said they weren't, I think they're telling untruths. It was a bit frightening. But we had to get through it. Which you would have done if you'd have been born in that time. It certainly was where we lived. I lived in South London, in the borough of Lambeth. And we got bombed night after night. And eventually, through necessity, we had to move. Because every night we were living in Henderson shelters.
Do you have any memory of the army?
Memories of the army or of the war?
Of the war, yeah.
Oh, the only memory I have, and it sticks in my memory, was when we went across the water for the invasion. I have never seen so many ships in my life. There were battleships, cruisers, tank landing craft, infantry landing craft, all the ships you could imagine. And as far as the eye could see, all you could see was ships, all heading to France.
Did you enjoy being in the army?
I enjoyed every moment. Because it was, I think it was inbuilt, because my father was in the army in the First World War, and I joined the same regiment as he was in, which was the Royal Horse Artillery eventually. But my father had horses, but we didn't have horses. We had self-propelled guns, which was on a tank chassis.
What was your role in the army?
I ended up as a sergeant in the Royal Horse Artillery on 25-pounder gun.
Thank you. Is there anything you would like to share?
The only pleasant part of it was when the war finished. I met my wife, who was in the German Navy. And she'd just been discarded out of the Navy, and I met her in North Germany. And that was the best thing that ever happened to me in my life, meeting her. But unfortunately, she passed away since. But she had a hard time. She was in Hamburg when it was firebombed by the RAF. And she was on the trams there, and it was awful. She had an awful time. And contrary to what everybody thought at the time, all Germans weren't bad. A large proportion, yes, but they weren't all bad.
How was rations like in the army?
I think they were better than civilian life. We got fed regularly, and I've got no complaints of it. We didn't have all the delicacies as you would expect from nowadays, but it was quite sufficient. I was never hungry.
Were you or your family affected by the war in any way?
Affected? Not really, except my father got injured fire watching, which I didn't know for 40 years later. He was fire watching and the shell came down and he got some splinters in his back.
How did you feel when you heard that the war started?
I was only 14 then, I was a very young man then, I'd only just left school. It didn't really affect me as such.
How did you feel when the war ended?
Oh, very glad, because believe me, it is a horrendous thing. I sincerely hope you youngsters don't ever have to see it.
How did you meet your wife?
How did I meet my wife? Well, I was in North Germany, near the Danish border, in a little town called Haida. And my wife was walking across the square one night, and I thought, I'm going to talk to that young lady. And I couldn't speak a word of German, and she couldn't speak a word of English. But we got together and we met, and from then onwards love bloomed and we eventually got married. And that was the best night of my life.
What is night watching?
Was that fire watching?
Fire watching.
Fire watching.
Fire watching? Who, my father?
Yeah. What was,
Yes,
what
he was.
was fire watching?
My father was fire watching. Oh, I see, you don't know what fire watching is. Well, when the war was going on, and these factories, all the factories used to have wardens and all that, and they used to be prepared for any eventuality. For instance, if the firm caught fire, and they were called fire wardens, and everybody had to take their turn to keep out there and keep observation on the factories and firms and what have you, and take necessary action if the fire occurred.
How did you get this badge?
Well, that was given to all our veterans who landed in Normandy in June 1944. And 70 years later, the French government decided to give all the survivors that if they applied for it. But you had to be a Normandy veteran to acquire that. And it's called the Legion of Honour.
Dear Mr. Granger, I have the pleasure of informing you that the President of the Republic has appointed you to the rank of Chevalier of the Order National de l'Honneur. I offer you my warmest congratulations on this high honour in recognition of your acknowledged military engagement and your steadfast involvement in the liberation of France during the Second World War. As we contemplate the Europe of peace, we must never forget the heroes like you who came from Britain and the Commonwealth to begin the liberation of Europe by liberating France. We owe our freedom and security to your dedication because you were ready to risk your life.
And when I landed in Normandy, I was 18. And there was people even younger than me.
Can you please read your poem?
Can you read the poem?
Yeah?
Yeah, you can read. I'm not reading that.
No. Okay.
I wrote that when my wife passed away. I thought I had to put something down on paper.
My Ella. The fighting's finished, the guns have ceased. Hope we do pray for a lasting peace. Much death and carnage I have seen, when out of all this darkness I did glean. A German girl who had endured much hardship, we stopped, spoke and started up a friendship. I knew then that I was glad I was still alive. My life and happiness began that summer of 45. A gentle kiss and then we parted. We had no idea that then what we had started. It was the beginning of a wonderful love. The seed had been sown from your dear Lord above. Many years have passed and we've got old. In my eyes she is still wonderful to behold. Alas, the day has come when we must part. I do so with tears and a broken heart. You have left me now, my darling Ella. One day soon I pray we will be together. My loved one's gone, I'm all alone. No one will understand my grief. The sun was bright when Ella was home. 60 years of love was far too brief. Dear God, I'm burdened with such great sorrow. Through choice I would never have let her go. She was always mine until tomorrow. But you, dear Lord, decided that was not so. She has left the earth, but not my heart. Our life together was so full of love. I could never see the day we would part. Please keep her safe now she's above. My life has been full and I've savoured much. Dear Lord, one day again, let me feel Ella's touch.
In this classroom to this day I walk away. I have never felt so lost.